Has Japan's Kuril fury just triggered a monstrous warning from Moscow's most hardline voice? As Takaichi erupts over Putin's Kuril visit, is Moscow now telling Tokyo to back off for good? Is Medvedev breathing fire over an 80-year-old territorial claim that Japan refuses to abandon? Has Putin's Kuril gambit now become even more dangerous for Takaichi and Japan's long-term ties with Russia? As Japan erupted over the Kuril Islands, Putin's top aide Dmitry Medvedev warned Tokyo of what he called monstrous consequences if it continued challenging Russian control. On August 13, Medvedev said the Kuril Islands would forever remain Russian territory, dismissing any possibility that Moscow would reopen sovereignty negotiations with Japan. The former Russian president openly mocked Tokyo's claim that the islands are Japanese land, accusing Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi of repeating arguments that would change nothing on the ground. Medvedev said, and I quote, "Japan's PM Takaichi can prattle on all she likes about the Kuril Islands being historically Japanese, but this chatter won't change a thing. They were, are, and will remain Russian land. Anyone who fails to understand this will face the monstrous consequences of their delusion." Unquote. The warning came after Tokyo escalated its diplomatic protest over Putin's visit to Iturup, one of 4 islands claimed by Japan. Vladimir Putin's first visit to the Kuril Islands has triggered a fresh protest from Tokyo, reopening one of the most deeply rooted territorial disputes in the Asia-Pacific. On August 13, Vladimir Putin visited Iturup, an island in the Russian-controlled Kuril chain that Japan claims as part of its northern territories. The trip marked Putin's first in-person visit to the disputed Pacific island chain, sending a clear signal that Moscow has no intention of softening its control. Putin toured a fish processing plant, a hospital and a school on Iturup, using a civilian visit to underline Russia's administration and long-term presence on the island. The Russian president also met Sakhalin Governor Valery Limarenko, linking the disputed island to Moscow's wider governance and development plans for the Far East. Japan immediately protested Putin's visit to Iturup, which Tokyo calls Iturofu, saying the trip directly contradicts Japan's long-standing sovereignty position. Tokyo claims Iturup and 3 other southern Kuril Islands as its northern territories, arguing that they were unlawfully taken by the Soviet Union at the end of World War II. Japan's foreign minister said the islands remain Japanese territory under international law, insisting Tokyo has never accepted Russia's control of the disputed chain. Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi also condemned Putin's trip, saying it hurt Japanese public sentiment and could make any long-term repair in bilateral ties far more difficult.
As the government of Japan, we have repeatedly made similar requests to the Russian side that President Putin refrain from visiting the northern territories. Nevertheless, we strongly protest President Putin's visit to Iturofu Island today. The northern territories are an inherent part of Japan's territory, both historically and under international law. This latest visit to Iturofu Island by the incumbent president of Russia runs contrary to Japan's consistent position regarding the northern territories. Furthermore, it hurts the feelings of the Japanese people and is absolutely unacceptable. Following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the Japan-Russia relationship has been in a difficult state. Even under such circumstances, Japan has made every possible effort to improve the relationship. However, this visit will only deepen negative sentiment towards Russia and Japan and make it harder to rebuild relations for the long term. For Japan, issues involving the northern territories, particularly matters concerning former island residents visiting family graves, are humanitarian issues. Thus, we have kept channels for dialogue open and have continued to address these matters through talks. But the current situation is extremely regrettable. As for our response going forward, the government will carefully consider appropriate measures.
As Tokyo protested Putin's visit, former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev sharply attacked Japan, accusing the U.S. ally of creating trouble by persisting with its territorial claim. Medvedev's remarks added a confrontational political edge to Putin's trip, suggesting Moscow now sees Japan's claim as part of a wider U.S.-backed pressure campaign in the Pacific. The Soviet Union seized the 4 southernmost Kuril Islands from Japan in the final days of World War II, establishing a dispute that still shapes relations between Moscow and Tokyo. This territorial conflict has prevented Russia and Japan from signing a formal peace treaty to officially end their World War II hostilities more than 8 decades later. Decades of negotiations have failed to produce a settlement, as Japan demands the return of all 4 islands while Russia refuses to surrender any territory it controls. Moscow has also expanded its military presence across the Kurils, building airstrips, barracks, coastal missile positions and air defense infrastructure near Japan's northern border. Putin's Kuril visit followed a wider tour through Russia's Far East, linking the island trip to a broader show of Moscow's military and political reach in the Pacific. Before arriving in Iturup, Putin visited Sakhalin and attended the final stage of Pacific Fleet exercises, where Russian naval forces rehearsed operations across the region. Moscow has reinforced its military presence across the Kurils in recent years, turning the island chain into a forward defensive belt between the Sea of Okhotsk and the open Pacific. Just a day earlier, Putin accused Japan of escalating tensions in the Asia-Pacific, as Tokyo accelerates rearmament and expands defense cooperation with Washington.
I would like to thank the commander for his detailed reports. Exercises such as the one we are discussing now are necessary both to maintain the fleet's combat readiness and to protect the interests of our country and its security in the Asia-Pacific region as a whole. They are also needed to strengthen Russia's overall military capabilities in this region. All this must, of course, be done taking into account the experience of the special military operation. The commander and I discussed this while traveling to the ship. You mentioned the combat operations of the Pacific Fleet's Marines. This was the 150th Brigade, now the 50th Marine Division. I would like to stress that there are no combat missions that our Marines cannot accomplish, including those connected with these ocean-related challenges. The men act boldly, professionally, and heroically. The fleet as a whole is also fully accomplishing the tasks assigned to it within its area of responsibility. These tasks are becoming increasingly important, particularly given the evolving situation in the region, which we have just discussed. Unfortunately, we can see the potential for a conflict growing here. NATO is making inroads into the region, new military political blocs are being formed, and new weapon systems are being deployed or planned for deployment here, creating threats to our country as well. Tensions are also being heightened in the neighboring Arctic region, which has already been mentioned, including over the use of the Northern Sea Route. Russia has always, and I mean always, supported cooperation and continues to reaffirm its readiness to work together to make use of the advantages offered by the Northern Sea Route, naturally within the framework of existing international maritime law. Countries that want to work with us are showing interest in this. These are primarily our friends, China, India, and other countries. They are discussing these issues with us, and we will certainly welcome joint work both with our friends and with all countries wishing to take part in this important and highly promising endeavor to expand global logistics. It has already been said that the situation in the Asia-Pacific region is not simple and there are plenty of problems. I would only add that we would like to understand the position of Japan, our neighbor, which was mentioned during the reports, under the pretext of the events in Ukraine. And without examining the causes of the conflict, Japan imposed sanctions on Russia that were entirely unprovoked on our part. Moreover, for the first time in its modern military doctrine documents, Japan has listed Russia among the main sources of threats. I would like to emphasize that we do not threaten Japan. We have absolutely no claims against it. On the contrary, it is Japan that has territorial claims against our country, referring to the issue of the Kuril Islands. However, the current situation is enshrined in international documents as one of the realities resulting from the Second World War. Even so, Russia was prepared to seek a solution. We sought to conclude a peace treaty with Japan. Let me remind you that back in the mid-1950s, the Soviet Union signed a declaration with Japan that opened the way towards a peace treaty. Japan signed it as well, but subsequently moved away from it. Later, the new Russia responded to a request from the Japanese government and resumed, I repeat, at the request of the Japanese side, dialogue on ways to reach a peace treaty. From the outset, it was stated that this work would also be based on the declaration I have just mentioned. I should confirm that at that time we developed constructive relations with a number of Japanese leaders, including former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who was tragically killed and who did a great deal to bring Japan and Russia closer together and narrow the differences between our positions. Unfortunately, we are now seeing a change in that approach. Let me stress, it was in no way provoked by us. Therefore, the commander's proposals on developing the Pacific Fleet and improving its capabilities and potential will be supported. All issues related to implementing these proposals will be carefully assessed, and the relevant instructions will be issued to both the Defense Ministry and the Russian government. Those responsible and the sources of funding must be identified. At the same time, I want to emphasize that Russia is ready to cooperate with all its neighbors, including Japan and other countries. I know that the Pacific Fleet regularly holds joint exercises, and I ask that operational exercises continue.
The forces and units of the Pacific Fleet are on constant combat alert, carrying out their designated tasks, and are capable of ensuring the security of the Russian Federation in the Asia-Pacific region. The military-political situation in the region is tense and shows a steady trend towards escalation. The main factors driving the rise in military and political tensions are the destructive activities of Western countries aimed at reshaping the security architecture in the Asia-Pacific region, their build-up of an advanced military presence, and the creation of new military and political alliances under Western control. These include the AUKUS and Triple Alliance blocs. New alliances similar to these are currently being formed, namely JAFUS, Quad and AJUS. In effect, these are military-political alliances. They are essentially elements of NATO, merely under a different guise. They conduct joint operational combat training exercises, the number and scale of which are constantly increasing. There is a clear trend towards the involvement of NATO's military and political resources in regional politics within the Asia-Pacific region. The escalation of tensions in the fleet's area of operations is also confirmed by the increasingly aggressive actions of Japan's military and political leadership. For instance, on July 4th, the White Paper on Japan's defense was published, setting out the military and political leadership's course towards open militarization. Russia is identified as one of the threats to Japan. It is also stated that military spending is to be increased to 2%. Furthermore, the Japanese Defense Minister, Shinjiro Koizumi, has openly declared that it would be appropriate to abolish the 3 non-nuclear principles, which is something that cannot be allowed in our region. Hearings are also being held on the revision of Article 9 of the Japanese Constitution and the establishment of the Japan Self-Defense Forces. A major concern is the threat of the West blocking Russia's maritime trade with the aim of inflicting maximum economic damage on the country. I am aware that, as part of the 21st package of anti-Russian sanctions, the European Union has lifted the previously imposed ban on the sale of Russian hydrocarbons within EU countries. This grants EU member states the right, at national level, to adopt legislative decisions regarding the sale of hydrocarbons from detained vessels of the so-called Russian shadow fleet. In doing so, the European Union is seeking to provide a legal justification for its actions, which contravene international norms. In accordance with your instructions, Comrade Supreme Commander-in-Chief, we have carried out a detailed analysis of maritime traffic in the Asia-Pacific region. We know the routes, what is being carried, and whose ships they are. In the exclusive economic zone of the Russian Federation alone, along the islands of the South Kuril Ridge, 1,001 vessels passed through between April 24 and August 6, 2026. Of these, 379 were flying the flags of unfriendly states, including 273 dry cargo ships and 71 tankers, amongst which were 26 British vessels and 9 French vessels. At the same time, Western states are actively using vessels flying the flags of third countries to transport cargo in their own interests. In essence, this constitutes their shadow fleet. We have the capabilities to inspect and detain vessels belonging to unfriendly states and their shadow fleet. Interagency cooperation is well organized. We are ready to begin tackling these tasks. The report is complete.
Upgrade your news experience with the all-new HT app. Download now.